Good afternoon and welcome to a special senior management team meeting held on 28th of December 2012. This will be the last senior management team meeting of the year. As you know, I have been very concerned over the global economy and I appreciate that it has been a difficult time for yourselves, especially so with the redundancies and wage freezes within your departments. It is because I am so concerned with our economic future I have decided to invite Charles back to give an update on the global Western economies. As you know, Charles is a chief executive officer of a leading bank.
Thank you, Tony. Today I would like to talk about the fiscal cliff. Does anyone know about it?
Is it close to the White Cliffs of Dover in southern England?
Ha ha, Steve, you do make and laugh. The fiscal cliff is simply a term used for the economic problems ahead in the US. That's correct, George. Indeed. Those of us in the know, such as myself, knew the fiscal cliff would arrive again.
What do you mean again?
Tracy, the fiscal cliff is nothing new. In the past it was just smaller. So why are we at the fiscal cliff again? Simply put, Steve, the politicians have been deferring reality. 1971 was a turning point. Richard Nixon, who was the president of the US at the time, broke the link between the dollar and the gold standard. Prior to 1971 we had to maintain a fractional reserve ratio of 1 to 9, that is to say, 1 unit of gold in the vaults had to support 9 units of currency loaned out. It effectively prevented too much currency being loaned into existence. The gold standard provided constraints. However, Richard Nixon needed to fund the Vietnam War and it could only be achieved by taking the dollar off the gold standard. It was only supposed to a temporary measure. However, the dollar was never returned to the gold standard and has effectively become a fiat currency, that is to say, backed by nothing. The dollar is the world's reserve currency, but it is losing its status as being a safe haven.
Why is that?
Okay, I would like to do some role play. I would like to choose Tracy and George. If you look at the screen behind me, you can see that I have made the assumption that you are both on £26,000 a year.
I wish.
Okay, George, let's assume it is year 1. How are you going to spend for money? I shall save as much as I can, and have about £10,000 to roll over into next year. Tracy, how will you be spending your money?
I am going to have a good time and spend all my money. My motto is, live for today.
Okay, I am just going to update the screen behind me. After year 1, George has a balance of £10,000 and Tracy has a nil balance.
At least I'm having a good time, whilst George on the other hand is leading a boring life.
Let's go to year 2. George, how much are you going to spend? I shall be spending only £14,000. Tracy, how much money will you spend?
Live for today, that's my motto. I shall spend £27,000 and borrow £1,000 towards my holiday.
Again, I shall update the screen behind me. There clearly is a different spending pattern between George and Tracy. George has managed to save money, whilst on the other hand Tracy has gone into debt. Over to year 3. George, how much are you going to spend? I shall be spending £150,000, but that includes a mortgage for a house. That's fine. Tracy, how much will you be spending?
Wow, I am not going to get into as much debt as George. I will only spend £30,000. Going to treat myself to some designer clothes.
Let's take stock at this position. Just going to update the screen behind me. We can see that both George and Tracy are in debt. George is in debt by £102,000 and Tracy is in debt by £5,000. Both Tracy and George have borrowed from the future. However, George has an asset, whereas Tracy has no assets worth speaking about.
At least I will be having a good time.
At this point in time I would describe Tracy as having a debt hill, rather than a debt mountain. Her debts at this stage are manageable, however there will come a point where it won't be. Tracy is living an unsustainable lifestyle and a point will come when she cannot pay off her debts, because the interest payments will become crippling. She has reached a fiscal cliff, albeit rather small at this stage. However, rather than face reality, Tracy chooses to spend beyond her means. To fund her lifestyle, she has had to borrow from tomorrow. At this stage, Tracy would probably have a good credit rating, as at this point she would probably manage to keep up with her payments. George has borrowed much more money from the future. However, his asset can be seen as an investment. His lifestyle is sustainable because on balance he has a net worth. Okay, what I am going to do now is fast forward a few years to see how the current spending patterns on their finances pan out. It is shocking for Tracy. She owes £126,000. In this scenario, she has spent more than she can afford to sustain her lifestyle. As she continued to spend beyond her means, a tipping point was reached. By that I mean there would be no chance at all of paying the debts back. The interest payments would have been crippling. What once was considered a debt hill became a debt mountain. Tracy could have faced those fiscal cliffs over the years, but decided not to, because her motto was live for today. Well, Tracy, what about tomorrow? Because believe me, tomorrow comes. You said George was leading a boring lifestyle. Yes, he did make sacrifices, because at the end of the day, that's what we have to do. George at the end of the period ended up with a balance of £8,000 plus a house that was paid for. He can now look forward to a relatively stable future. You, on the other hand, Tracy, have become a debt slave, with no chance at all of paying your debts back. The US has acted just like Tracy, living beyond its means, no wish at all to face reality. In a few days' time a decision has to be made about the fiscal cliff. Have a look behind me. That's where we are. We have gone over the cliff. Reality has not yet caught up with us. Momentarily we are suspended in midair, but when reality arrives, we are going to fall so fast. Forget about the posturing amongst the politicians. It's not going to change anything. The tipping point was passed many years ago. There may be an agreement after the deadline, such as raising the debt ceiling, but it will only make the fiscal cliff worse in the future. Many people have been like Tracy. Those people will have to get used to the paradigm shift and accept that their standard of living will fall. Unfortunately, there will be some prudent people who will also suffer, and they can thank the politicians and the banking elite. In a nutshell, we ran up a deficit. We ignored the facts. We blamed someone else, put up tax. I cannot deny we had a good crack, but now we have to pay it back.